The Forbidden Archive. The discovery in Sector 9. Admiral Kexvar of the Consortium fleet had seen many strange things in his 40 years of service. He had witnessed dying stars collapse into themselves, watched entire civilizations rise from primitive worlds, and negotiated peace between species that communicated through colors instead of words. But nothing had prepared him for what his scout team found drifting in Sector 9. "Sir, you need to see this," Lieutenant Vorn's voice crackled through the comm system, his usual calm replaced by something Kexvar had never heard before, genuine fear. The holographic display flickered to life in the command center. Floating in the endless black was a structure that defied every law of physics Kexvar understood. It looked like a massive cube, each side stretching roughly 10 kilometers, made of a material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. No windows. No obvious entry points. No identification markers. "How long has it been there?" Kexvar asked, his 3 hearts beating faster than normal. "That's the problem, sir," Vorn replied. "According to our dating scans, this structure is over 50,000 cycles old. But it only appeared on our sensors 3 days ago. Before that, nothing. It's like it suddenly decided to become visible." The human warning. Kexvar ordered his ship closer, but before they could move, another vessel appeared on their screens. Human design. Military grade. It dropped out of faster-than-light travel with precision that suggested they'd been waiting. "Consortium vessel, this is Captain Marcus Webb of the Human Defense Initiative. You are ordered to maintain your current position and proceed no closer to that structure." Kexvar felt his scales ripple with annoyance. Humans. The newcomers who had joined the galactic community barely 200 cycles ago, yet somehow thought they could give orders to species that had been exploring space for millennia. "Captain Webb," Kexvar replied, keeping his voice diplomatic but firm. "This is unclaimed space. The Consortium has every right to investigate unknown structures." There was a pause. When Webb spoke again, his voice carried a weight that made Kexvar reconsider his dismissive thoughts. "Admiral, that structure isn't unknown. We know exactly what it is. And if you value the lives of everyone in this sector, you'll listen very carefully to what I'm about to tell you. The archive's purpose." Captain Webb's face appeared on the main screen. He looked older than his service record suggested, his eyes carrying the burden of knowledge no one should have to bear. Behind him, Kexvar could see human crew members working frantically at their stations. "That structure is called the Archive," Webb began. "It was built by humans. Not us. Not the humans you know. The ones who came before." "Before?" Kexvar's chief scientist, Dr. Thora, leaned forward. "Captain, humanity's records only go back 15,000 cycles. You've told us yourselves that you experienced a technological collapse." "We did," Webb confirmed. "But we're learning that collapse wasn't natural. It was deliberate. A choice made by our ancestors to protect the galaxy from what they'd created." He pulled up data files, sharing them with the Consortium ship. Kexvar watched in growing horror as information flooded his screens. Ancient human civilizations that had mastered technologies the current Consortium could only dream of. Weapons that could unmake reality itself. Ships that traveled not through space but between dimensions. And at the center of it all, the Archive. "Your ancestors built this?" Dr. Thora whispered. "But why? What's inside?" Webb's expression darkened. "Knowledge. Every discovery humanity made in 10,000 cycles of advancement. Every weapon, every technology, every dangerous idea that led us to the brink of destroying not just ourselves but the entire fabric of spacetime. They gathered it all, locked it away, and then destroyed their own civilization to make sure no one could ever access it again. The activation sequence. If it's locked away, then there's no danger, Kexvar argued. We can study the exterior, learn from the construction techniques. No, you can't, Webb said urgently. Because 3 days ago, something activated inside that cube. Something that's been dormant for 50,000 cycles just woke up. And it's calling out. As if to prove his point, a low-frequency signal suddenly filled the consortium ship. It wasn't sound, exactly. It was something that bypassed ears entirely and spoke directly to the brain. Every crew member on Kexvar's ship heard it, felt it, understood it instantly. Come closer. Learn. Grow. Transcend. The promise in that signal was intoxicating. Kexvar felt his mind expanding just from hearing it, glimpsing possibilities he'd never imagined. Technologies that could end suffering, extend life indefinitely, reshape entire worlds with a thought. Shut off all receivers. Webb was shouting. Don't listen to it. That's how it gets inside your head. But it was too late for some. Kexvar watched in horror as 3 of his crew members stood up from their stations, their eyes glazed, and began walking toward the airlock. Stop them, he ordered. Security grabbed them, but the affected crew members fought with strength they shouldn't possess. One of them, a small communications officer named Pix, threw a security guard twice her size across the room. We need to learn, Pix said, but her voice was wrong. Too calm. Too certain. The archive has so much to teach us. We just need to go inside. We just need to open it. The human sacrifice. Captain Webb's ship moved between the consortium vessel and the archive. Admiral, you need to evacuate this sector immediately. We're initiating Protocol Omega. What's Protocol Omega? Kexvar demanded, even as he ordered his helm to reverse course. Every human ship in range has received the same orders we have. If the archive fully activates, we're to detonate our reactors in a specific pattern. The combined explosions will create a temporary dimensional rift that should pull the archive into another reality. Dr. Thor's eyes widened. That would kill everyone on your ship. All the human ships. Yes, Webb said simply. But it would save everyone else. That's what Protocol Omega means. Total sacrifice to contain what our ancestors created. Kexvar felt something crack in his chest. He thought he understood humans. Thought they were just another species, ambitious but manageable. But this willingness to die to protect others from mistakes made 50,000 cycles ago. There has to be another way, Kexvar said. There isn't, Webb replied. Our ancestors learned that the hard way. The archive can't be reasoned with, can't be controlled, can't be studied safely. It can only be contained. And if containment fails... He trailed off, but his meaning was clear. The choice. More signals pulsed from the archive. Stronger now. More insistent. On Kexvar's ship, a dozen more crew members stood up, their eyes empty of everything except the desire to reach that black cube. Through his view screen, Kexvar saw other ships arriving. Human vessels, dozens of them, taking up positions around the archive in a perfect geometric pattern. Each one broadcasting a simple message: we stand guard. We always will. Admiral, Webb said quietly. In about 60 seconds, that archive is going to fully activate. When it does, it will transmit knowledge directly into the mind of every sapient being within 10 light years. Knowledge that will drive most of them insane, turn others into something worse, and give the rest access to technologies that will make them think they're gods. And you'll die to stop that? We already died once to stop it, Webb corrected. 50,000 cycles ago, our ancestors chose to forget everything, to send themselves back to the Stone Age, rather than let this knowledge spread. We're just finishing what they started. Kexvar looked at his crew, at the dozens now standing zombie-like, waiting to reach the archive. He looked at the human ships, each one crewed by people who knew they had seconds left to live. And he made a choice. Human fleet, this is Admiral Kexvar. Consortium Command is authorizing immediate evacuation of all vessels in this sector. You'll have clear space to execute Protocol Omega. He paused. And for what it's worth, Captain Webb, I'm sorry. Sorry we didn't listen. Sorry we didn't understand. Webb smiled sadly. You couldn't have known. No one can until they feel the archive's call. Just promise me something, Admiral. Tell the galaxy what happened here. Tell them that humans died to protect them. And tell them that if anyone ever finds another archive, to run. Just run and never look back. The archive pulsed one final time. The signal was overwhelming now, promising everything, offering godhood to anyone who would just come closer, just listen, just learn. And then the human ships detonated. 43 fusion reactors went critical simultaneously. The explosion was precise, controlled, beautiful in its terrible purpose. Reality itself seemed to tear open, a wound in space that pulled the archive through, dragging it into some other dimension where its terrible knowledge could never touch this galaxy again. When the light faded, the human ships were gone. The archive was gone. And Kexvar's possessed crew members collapsed, freed from whatever had been controlling them. In the silence that followed, Kexvar understood something fundamental about humanity. They weren't just stubborn or persistent or brave. They were the species that remembered their mistakes so deeply that they would die, again and again, to prevent others from making them. The truth that changed everything. The aftermath. The consortium held an emergency session 7 days after the archive incident. Representatives from every member species filled the grand chamber, their voices a chaos of confusion, anger, and fear. Admiral Kexvar stood at the center, preparing to deliver his report. But before he could speak, the chamber doors opened. A human delegation entered, led by an elderly woman who walked with the aid of a powered exoskeleton. Her identification badge read, Dr. Elena Vasquez, Director of Historical Recovery. Forgive the intrusion, she said, her voice amplified through the chamber's systems. But Admiral Kexvar's report is incomplete. He doesn't know the full truth. None of you do. And it's time you learned what humanity has been hiding for 50,000 cycles. The chamber fell silent. Kexvar felt his scales flatten in surprise. Director Vasquez, I don't understand. Captain Webb told me everything. No, Admiral. He told you what he believed to be true. What we've taught every human generation since the fall. But 6 months ago, we discovered something in the ruins of old Earth. A message from our ancestors. And it changed everything we thought we knew. The original sin. Dr. Vasquez activated a holographic projector. Images filled the air above the chamber floor. Ancient Earth, but not the primitive world humanity claimed to have emerged from. This was a civilization that made the current consortium look like children playing with blocks. This is humanity at our peak, Vasquez said. 53,000 cycles ago. We had mastered physics you haven't discovered yet. We could manipulate time, create matter from energy, fold space like paper. We were gods. And we were monsters. The images shifted. Planets being torn apart for resources. Entire star systems converted into computational matrices. Species being uplifted not out of kindness but to serve as experiments, as slaves, as toys. We discovered something our current science calls the transcendence point, Vasquez continued. A level of technological advancement where you can reshape reality itself. We reached it. And we used it to conquer this entire galaxy. Kexvar felt sick. Around the chamber, representatives from dozens of species stared in horror at the images. Their ancestors, primitive and helpless, being herded like animals by ancient humans. But something changed, Vasquez said quietly. We don't know what. The records are fragmentary. But our ancestors began to understand what they'd become. They saw the suffering they'd caused, the atrocities they'd committed in the name of progress. And they made a choice. The great forgetting. The hologram shifted again. This time it showed the construction of hundreds of archives, each one identical to the structure that had appeared in Sector 9. They gathered all their knowledge, every terrible thing they'd learned, and locked it away. Then they released a virus. Not a biological one. Something that rewrote the neural patterns in every human brain. It erased our memories, destroyed our understanding of advanced technology, sent us back to the beginning. They chose to forget, Dr. Thora whispered. They destroyed their own civilization. More than that, Vasquez said. They destroyed all evidence of what they'd been. They wiped themselves from galactic history. They even manipulated the geological records on thousands of worlds to hide their crimes. When the current galactic community evolved and achieved spaceflight, they found no trace of the empire that had once enslaved them all. She paused, her aged eyes sweeping across the chamber. But they did one more thing. They programmed every archive with a failsafe. If any of their descendants, any humans, ever began to approach the transcendence point again, the archives would activate. They would call to us. Tempt us with all that lost knowledge. And if we took it, if we opened even one archive, the knowledge would spread and turn us back into the monsters we'd been. The Eternal Guard. But why? Kexvar demanded. If they wanted to prevent humanity from becoming dangerous again, why not just destroy all the knowledge? Why create the archives at all? Vasquez smiled sadly. Because they couldn't destroy it. The knowledge of how to reach the transcendence point is inevitable. Any civilization that advances far enough will discover it. It's written into the fabric of the universe itself. You can't unknow it. You can only choose not to use it. She pulled up more data. The archives are both a warning and a test. They're designed to activate when humanity reaches a certain level of advancement. And in that moment, we have to choose. Do we open them? Do we reclaim all that power? Or do we remember what our ancestors chose, and die to keep that knowledge contained? So every time an archive activates, Dr. Thora said slowly, humans have to sacrifice themselves to prevent it from spreading? Yes. It's happened 17 times since the fall. 17 times over 50,000 cycles, humans have detected an archive waking up and died to stop it. We call them the Eternal Guard. Every human culture has stories about them. Heroes who sacrifice themselves to protect the world from ancient evils. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted questions, accusations, demands for explanation. But Vasquez simply stood there, waiting for the noise to die down. The burden of memory. Finally, Consortium High Chancellor Mordax called for order. The ancient being, whose species had achieved space flight longer ago than most others could remember, studied Vasquez with unreadable eyes. Director, Mordax said slowly, are you telling us that humanity has been protecting the galaxy from yourselves for 50,000 cycles? That every time you die to stop an archive, you're preventing your own species from regaining godlike power? Yes, Chancellor. Then why reveal this now? Why tell us the truth? Vasquez's expression hardened. Because we're running out of time. The archives are activating more frequently. One every few thousand cycles used to be the pattern. But in the last 1,000 cycles, we've had to stop 5. The failsafe is degrading. And we've discovered something worse. She pulled up astronomical data. The transcendence point isn't just knowledge. It's a threshold. Our ancestors' research suggested that once a species crosses it, they stop being bound by normal physics. They exist partially outside reality. And they noticed something. Evidence of other species, from other galaxies, other times, that had crossed the transcendence point. Species that had become something beyond comprehension. And those species, Kexvar said, understanding dawning. They're still out there. Yes. The archives aren't just containing human knowledge. They're hiding this entire galaxy from beings that would view us as we viewed bacteria. Our ancestors built the archives and destroyed themselves to make this galaxy invisible to the transcended ones. The coming storm. The chamber fell into stunned silence. Every representative understood the implication. Humanity hadn't just been protecting the galaxy from humans. They'd been protecting everyone from things worse than anyone could imagine. How long? Chancellor Mordax asked. How long before the archives fail completely? Unknown, Vasquez admitted. Could be 10 cycles. Could be 10,000. But every time we destroy one, we weaken the network. They were designed to work together, to maintain the field that keeps us hidden. Eventually, we'll lose one. Let the knowledge spread. And when that happens. She didn't need to finish. Everyone understood. So what do we do? Kexvar asked. Vasquez looked around the chamber. We prepare. We train. We make sure that when the final archive activates, there are enough of us ready to die stopping it. We maintain the guard our ancestors established, no matter the cost. You mean humans will continue to sacrifice themselves, Dr. Thora said. If necessary, yes. But we're hoping others might join us. Now that you know the truth, now that you understand what's at stake, we're asking for help. Not to stop the archives, that's our burden. But to help watch, to help warn, to help evacuate sectors when an archive wakes up. Chancellor Mordax stood slowly. You're asking us to help you protect us from your own ancestors' mistakes. Yes, Vasquez said simply. Because they're not just our mistakes anymore. If the transcended ones find this galaxy, they'll consume everyone. Human and non-human alike. The oath. For a long moment, no one spoke. Then, surprisingly, it was Kexvar who broke the silence. I'll help, he said. The consortium will commit ships, resources, whatever you need. Captain Webb and 42 others died saving my crew. The least I can do is honor that sacrifice by making sure it wasn't in vain. One by one, other representatives stood. Not all of them. Some refused, unable to accept that humanity had once been the galaxy's conquerors. Others were too afraid. But enough stood to matter. Then we're agreed, Chancellor Mordax said. The galactic community will assist humanity in maintaining the archive's containment. We will commit resources to the Eternal Guard. And we will keep this truth secret from the general population, to prevent panic. Vasquez nodded gratefully. Thank you, Chancellor. Our ancestors would be proud. Would they? Mordax asked quietly. Or would they be horrified that their descendants are still cleaning up their mess 50,000 cycles later? Both, probably, Vasquez admitted. But that's the nature of sin. It echoes down through generations. All we can do is choose not to repeat it. The legacy. 3 months later, Kexvar stood on the bridge of his new command. A joint consortium human vessel designed specifically to respond to archive activations. Around him, a crew of mixed species trained for the moment when they might have to die to protect the galaxy. On his desk sat a small memorial plaque. It listed the names of Captain Marcus Webb and his crew. The 43 humans who had died in Sector 9. Below their names was a simple inscription in both human English and consortium standard. They chose to die so others could live. May we have their courage when our time comes. Through the view screen, Kexvar could see the darkness of space. Somewhere out there, hidden in the void, were hundreds of archives. Time bombs waiting to wake up and tempt humanity with the knowledge that had once made them gods. And somewhere even further out, beyond the edge of the galaxy, the transcended ones waited. Patient. Hungry. Searching for any sign of new prey. But between them and the galaxy stood the Eternal Guard. Human and non-human now, united in purpose. Ready to die as many times as necessary to keep the darkness at bay. Kexvar thought about what Vasquez had said. About how the knowledge of the Transcendence Point was written into the universe itself. How any sufficiently advanced species would eventually discover it. How the temptation to become gods was inevitable. But so was the choice to refuse that temptation. To remember the mistakes of the past and choose differently. To stand guard in the darkness, not because it was easy, but because it was necessary. That was humanity's true legacy. Not the empire they'd built or the atrocities they'd committed, but the choice they'd made to forget it all. To suffer for 50,000 cycles rather than inflict that suffering on others. And now that legacy belonged to everyone who stood the watch. Course plotted for Sector 12, his helm officer reported. Another archive has gone active. Kexvar straightened in his chair. Time to arrival? 16 hours, sir. Then let's not waste time. Engage. As the ship jumped to faster-than-light speed, Kexvar felt a grim satisfaction. The archives would keep waking up. The transcended ones would keep searching. And the Eternal Guard would keep dying to stop them. But that was fine. That was the job. That was the choice his ancestors hadn't had to make, but that he made willingly now. To stand between the innocent and the darkness. Forever, if necessary. Because some knowledge was too dangerous to possess. Some power was too terrible to wield. And some sacrifices were worth making, again and again, for all eternity. That was what the humans had taught the galaxy. Not through conquest this time, but through their refusal to conquer again. And it was a lesson Kexvar would carry to his grave.